Welcome to episode 68 of the 3am Fear podcast. On January 7, 1988, Alan returned home from his night shift at 2 am. As he pulled into the driveway, he got out of the car and walked towards the front door, still unsure if the blessing had worked or not. As he walked towards the front door, he heard an eerie howling sound, like a heavy wind. But there was no wind at all that night. The night was still and cold. Confused, he walked towards the house, and that's when he heard a voice within the howling saying, "Come here." Curious and concerned, he walked around the back of the house, but saw no one. When he returned to the front of the house, he noticed a strange glow coming from the garage. Scared, Alan thought that was a fire. He quickly unlocked the front door, set down his lunch bag, grabbed the fire extinguisher, and rushed to the garage. To his surprise, there was no fire, no smoke, no damage.
Hello and welcome to the 3am Fear podcast. I'm Nikita Ferrao, mystery and thriller author. On this podcast, I talk about real crimes and real people. Due to the graphic nature of some of this content, listener discretion is advised. You can find the episode show notes on my website 3amfear.com. Let's get started.
In February of 1987, Alan and Debbie Tallman moved with their two young children to a new house in Horicon, Wisconsin, a small farming community. They loved their new home, which Debbie described as her dream home. The Tallman family moved into a small farming community with under 3,000 residents. They purchased a house with a low-interest Farmers Home Administration loan, which was perfect for their growing family. Their children, 7-year-old Danny and 2-year-old Marianne, each had their own rooms. Debbie was also pregnant with their third child, Sarah. The family did not want their real children's name to be public, so these names that I'm telling you are fake. The neighborhood was a part of a housing project where 10 houses had just been built on a plot of marshland once used by local teens for partying. The modest houses were on a dead-end street with no sidewalks, and a railroad cut through the backyards. The only gas station in the area sat on the main road leading into town. The Tallmans fit right into their new neighborhood. They wanted a quiet and peaceful life where they could work and raise their children. They were proud because this was their first home that they ever owned, and their goal was to pay off the mortgage before they retired. When buying their home, the Tallmans discovered that the previous owners had only lived in the brand new house for 18 months. Fortunately, the house didn't need any major upgrade. It was beautiful and perfect, and the Tallmans were in love with the place. They decided that all that the house needed was a few coats of paint, some decoration, and furniture. Not long after they moved in, Debbie and Alan found a set of bunk beds at a second-hand store for $100. Since they had only 3 bedrooms and another child was on the way, they knew that they soon would need some more space. And they figured that the girls would share a room, and that's why they decided to buy these bunk beds. They bought these bunk beds and moved them into the basement and decided to remove them when the time came. After moving in, Debbie noticed that the kids were frequently getting sick, which was unusual because the children almost never fell sick before, at least not these many times. Now, despite visiting doctors, the children kept having fevers and they kept getting sick. The new home, although was perfect in many ways, seemed to bring with it a mystery. Why were their children falling sick? They thought that it was the weather, or maybe someone in school was sick, and that's what was spreading around. Soon, even Alan started having back pain. The Tallman family started to worry. Was it some sort of a germ? Some sort of a sickness? Why was it affecting everyone? Could it have been contaminated paint? They weren't sure. To know what was exactly wrong with the house, they decided to call a building inspector to check out the house. The inspector didn't find anything. The house was perfectly up to code. Alan became increasingly uneasy in the house, especially at night. He couldn't quite pinpoint to that thing and say this was the problem, but he knew that something was wrong, and this was making him nervous. This change in him was even scaring Debbie and the children, because Alan had always been this calm and loving husband and father. However, something in this house caused a shift in him. Even guests who came to the house felt as if something was wrong. The Tallman family and their house was no longer happy. Initially, the house was a gathering place. People would come, hang out with the family, and have a fun time. But as time passed, more and more people started dropping out until the family was left all alone. Now remember, Debbie was pregnant at this time. During a routine checkup for Debbie's pregnancy, the doctor discovered that her placenta was in the wrong position, known as placenta previa. To avoid complications, Debbie was advised to take rest as much as possible. Her mother stepped in to help, coming over daily for 3 months to cook, clean, and take care of the children. Despite the support, the house and its atmosphere was not something that her mother liked. After Sarah was born and Debbie no longer was at any risk, her mother told her that she didn't like this atmosphere. She was not comfortable. The stress was too much to her. She just didn't want to tell her pregnant daughter that. But she still loved this house, no matter what, and so she decided that even if her mother was not comfortable coming home, she was fine with it. Now one night, Alan and Debbie decided to have a date night, just the two of them. After finding a babysitter, they headed to their favorite local restaurant and had a great time together. It was the first time in a long while that they didn't feel stressed or sick. However, those feelings immediately returned when they got home. Their babysitter met them at the door, out of breath, with a strange look in her eyes. She explained what had happened earlier that evening. She and Danny had been sitting at the kitchen table playing a board game when both of them heard a soft tapping noise. The tapping noise grew louder and louder until it turned into a banging noise. They watched in shock as the chair at the opposite end of the table started rocking back and forth, slamming its legs to the ground. It then lifted off the ground, slammed back down, and shifted away from the table before suddenly stopping. Both Danny and the babysitter freaked out. The babysitter eventually calmed herself down and then ended up putting Danny into bed. The house remained quiet after that. When Alan and Debbie returned home, the babysitter now explained everything. They were concerned, but they didn't believe her. If you look at it from their perspective, they didn't experience it, so of course they didn't believe her. Later, when they asked Danny, he told exactly the same story that the babysitter had. But the parents still didn't believe him. After all that happened, Debbie started having violent nightmares that got worse with each night. In May of 1987, after setting up bunk beds for their daughters, the Tallman family hoped for peaceful nights in their new home. Alan tucked in his son, who liked falling asleep to the radio. After turning it on, Alan left for his own room. Soon, the son started noticing that the radio channels were changing by itself. Confused, he called out to his father for help. Alan came and adjusted the radio for him and then returned to bed. But moments later, the son saw the dial moving again. Scared, he ran to his parents' room, asking to sleep there. Alan was upset. He wanted a good night's sleep, but his son kept telling him that something was wrong with the radio. Frustrated, he went to the room and unplugged the radio to calm his son down. The strange incident left everyone unsettled. Alan was frustrated and tired, and he thought that his son was making up this whole story. He was annoyed. He just wanted a good night's sleep. He thought that it was best to remove the radio altogether, and this left his son all alone in the room without a radio. As summer turned into winter, the Tallman family struggled more and more with sleepless nights. Nightmares were common for everyone, including Alan and Debbie, as they often heard strange noises like creaking. At first, they tried to dismiss it, thinking that maybe it was the wind. But then, Debbie sometimes would hear girls giggling and playing in the room in the middle of the night. But when she would go to the room, she would see her daughters fast asleep. This left her feeling confused. One day, Alan decided to renovate the basement, hoping to turn it into a man cave. While painting, Debbie called him upstairs for lunch. Alan carefully placed the paintbrush on the table with the bristles hanging off the edge, planning to return right after eating. He went upstairs to join his family for lunch, leaving his work in the basement for a brief break. After lunch, when Alan returned to the basement, he found the paintbrush standing upright in the paint container, even though he was sure that he left it on the edge of the table. Puzzled and scared, he convinced himself that maybe he left it like that and just forgot. It was strange, but it was doable. Maybe he made a mistake. He picked up the brush and went over to the sink and started cleaning it. As he worked, he noticed a looming shadow move across the room out of the corner of his eye. Startled, he looked up, but nothing was there. He brushed it off as a trick of his mind, yet he was left with this feeling that he was not alone in that room. He finished cleaning up and decided to put his basement project on hold for some time. He didn't mention the shadow thing to Debbie because he didn't want to worry her. A few weeks later, Alan would go back to the basement project without any trouble. But one day, as he went downstairs to continue the work, he noticed that the basement was freezing cold. A strong draft of wind hit him as he reached the bottom of the stairs. Now this was odd because this was the basement. But when he looked across the room, he saw an entire basement window had been removed. But things would not stop there. It would just get worse. One night, Alan got a sinus infection that required hospitalization. Debbie went with him, leaving her mother to watch the children. While asleep on the couch, Debbie's mother woke up to see red eyes staring at her. Terrified, she left the house quickly after Alan returned from the hospital. The other family members would later go on to say that they also saw similar visions. It was late one night when one of the girls screamed from the bunk beds. Debbie and Alan rushed to her room, finding her terrified and crying. She claimed that she saw a witch with red eyes who had been watching them from behind the door and had set her room on fire, causing her to scream in fear. Now, despite whatever their daughter said, Debbie and Alan told her that it was nothing. It was just a nightmare. Everything was fine. There was no fire in the room and there was no witch. However, after some time, their son would rush in and say the exact same thing, that he had seen a witch and all about setting fire. This convinced Debbie that something strange was happening in the house and she needed to keep her children safe. The family would continue experiencing all these uncertain, unsettling events. Doors would creak open and slam shut on their own. The odd noises persisted. This would happen even during dinner. Debbie, while doing her laundry one day, heard voices calling out to her, and this deeply scared her. Alan, however, dismissed all of this and reminded himself that he might be just worrying over nothing. One night, their son woke up screaming, claiming to see a dark cloud by his door that threatened to kill his family. A week before Christmas, the son, now too scared to sleep in his room, chose to sleep on the couch near the Christmas tree. He woke up screaming again, seeing the same old woman with red eyes threatening to harm his family and burn the house down. Debbie rushed to comfort him as he begged to leave the house. Alan was now increasingly frustrated and sleep deprived. His children wouldn't stop talking about whatever was happening to them. And at the same time, Alan was also experiencing something. Frustrated and angry, Alan decided to confront the ghost himself. I don't know why he did this, but he shouted at the top of his lungs, demanding the spirits to leave his house and his children alone. He even challenged them to fight him instead, which you should never do with a ghost. Now, despite what Alan thought would happen from his outburst, it did not bring peace to the house. He and Debbie needed help, and that's why they decided to contact their pastor. The pastor visited their home and immediately said there was an evil entity in their house. He believed that the entity was drawing energy from the children, causing them to be sick all the time. The pastor blessed the house, hoping to get rid of this spirit. However, things did not improve. 3 weeks later, on January 7, 1988, Alan returned home from his night shift at 2 a.m. As he pulled into the driveway, he got out of the car and walked towards the front door, still unsure if the blessing had worked or not. As he walked towards the front door, he heard an eerie howling sound, like a heavy wind. But there was no wind at all that night. The night was still and cold. Confused, he walked towards the house, and that's when he heard a voice within the howling saying, "Come here." Curious and concerned, he walked around the back of the house, but saw no one. When he returned to the front of the house, he noticed a strange glow coming from the garage. Scared, Alan thought that was a fire. He quickly unlocked the front door, set down his lunch bag, grabbed the fire extinguisher, and rushed to the garage. To his surprise, there was no fire, no smoke, no damage. Shocked, he went back to get his lunch bag, and that's when something invisible forcefully knocked the lunch bag from his hands, causing it to fly across the room and break a lamp. Moving wasn't an easy option for the family. It was expensive and complicated. So, Alan decided to take action in his own way. He began sleeping in his daughter's room, claiming he wanted to protect them. After a few nights in the room, he started hearing whispers, saying, "You're dead. You're dead." Although he was very much alive, these haunting whispers added more tension to the family. After that incident, the family decided to sleep in the same room, all together. A few days later, Alan had to work late, and he asked his brother to watch the girls. Alan felt better knowing that there was a man in the house who could protect the family. Since Alan was working late, Debbie planned to sleep with her son, and Alan's brother would sleep in the girls' room. Alan told his brother about the strange happenings, warning him to be careful. Now his brother was not a believer. He agreed to sleep that night. While sleeping in the girls' room, Alan's brother woke up with a loud bang. Startled, he saw a dark figure by the door, watching him. Terrified, he screamed, grabbed the children and took Debbie, and they needed to leave immediately. After almost 9 months of torture, the Tallman family fled the home and decided never to look back again. Debbie was finally relieved. 2 weeks later, the Tallmans decided to destroy the bunk beds, suspecting that it was the bunk beds that were haunted and not the house. Because all their problems started after they got the bunk beds and after the children started sleeping on the bunk beds. They took the beds to a dump to ensure that no one else would suffer what they did. After they moved out, the Tallman family settled for a new house and their lives returned to normal. They never had to face any other entity, any other paranormal experience again. No more voices, no more nightmares, no more trouble. They were happy. In April of 1988, another family moved into the old Tallman house. They said they never experienced any problem in that house. Despite this, the media got wind of the Tallman family ghost story, and that's when gossip began. Some accused that the Tallmans made this all up for money, but the family stood their ground. They said it was real, the haunting was real, their suffering was real. In fact, they even refused media attention. We don't know the real name of the Tallman children till now. Now I heard about this case on Unsolved Mysteries, and there you will never hear the name of the real Tallman children. No one knows who they are. No one knows where that family is. The Tallmans did agree to share their story with Unsolved Mysteries in 1988 under 3 conditions. Number 1, their faces will never be shown. Number 2, their children's name were protected. And number 3, reenactments of their experiences would be performed by actors and not the family members. The story of the Tallman family's paranormal experiences was later detailed in the book Haunted America by Michael Norman and Beth Scott. The authors did not link these hauntings to the bunk beds, but said that there was some activity in the property, which may have been because the property was on top of a former burial ground. Many people are still skeptical. They are not sure if the Tallman family was actually haunted, or if the family was overworked, overstressed, the children had a wild imagination, and then the parents just went with what the children said. Or it could be that they did all of this for money, which once again we are not sure because we don't know who the Tallmans are. So if they did this for fame, we should be knowing who they are. And that's the story of the Tallman family and the paranormal activity that they experienced in their home. A big thank you to all my fellow listeners who have been listening and supporting this episode. Your reviews, your listens mean a lot. If you love this episode, if you love the stories that I put out, then please do leave a rating on whichever podcasting platform you're listening from. It would really mean the world to me. Other than this, I also have a YouTube and an Instagram page. I'll link it in the description. Do check it out. I have different stories on Instagram, and I'm planning to put out some short horror stories on YouTube. So do subscribe to my YouTube channel and stay tuned. I am also an author, love fiction stories. If you want to check out my free fiction book, I'll link it in the description. I'll also link my other account in the description where I talk about fiction writing, travel, and I also will soon start sharing fiction stories. So stay tuned. So do follow me there. Thank you so much for everything. That's all for this week. Stay kind, stay safe, and see you next week.